Welcome to Pioneer Mindset, a place where we challenge our mindset and address the discomfort in both business and life by finding clarity resulting in bold conviction. I'm your host, Garrett Ruskamp, fifth generation farmer, husband, and father from rural Nebraska. Whether you're navigating frustration from past decisions or worry about the uncertainty you face today in your business, we're going to learn from our struggles and take on new challenges with a resilient mindset. Join me as I share my journey of struggles I've faced in agriculture as a farmer and family man. I'm ready to dive into honest conversations to tackle the mindsets surrounding key issues that rural ag business owners face that will ultimately help you gain control, leading to a profitable and sustainable business. Let's adapt to Pioneer Mindset and get to it.
Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Pioneer Mindset. All right, so you open your phone, you make your way to your go-to marketing app. Damn, corn's down again. This time 6 cents. We're almost down 50 cents off where we were just a couple weeks ago. And then all of a sudden that sinking feeling comes upon you. Maybe a bit of panic sets in, that feeling of regret, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Man, I wish I would have maybe sold some more or sold some at all. Are we ever going to get this run up again? Corn always seems to go down, and it definitely goes down faster than what it goes back up. I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know how this is going to affect our operation. And then all of a sudden, all those negative stories start running through your head. I don't know how this is going to affect us. Is this where we're going to fall? Is it ever going to come back up before harvest? Or on the flip side, you always got that optimistic farmer who is like, it'll go back up. Corn never goes down or never stays down, or corn never stays below $5 or something like that. Or I'm not worried about it. It'll come back up, post-harvest or whatever. You always got that optimistic farmer, kind of that flip side to maybe what most of us deal with, of just those negative thoughts that come up, especially when we're always seeing red on the screen instead of green on the screen, right? Every time we pull the phone up and we figure out, oh man, looking at the charts, we're down, like I said, 50 cents, right? And so at the time of this recording, we are actually off the highs, all right? I'm recording this about June 10th, just for context, just strictly for context, all right? So by the time you hear this, I really hope that we get a bump in the market or kind of another rally that kind of takes us a little bit higher. But it was just in the pickup, hauling fertilizer to Dad as he's outside dressing corn. And I heard the local cash bids come on the radio, and we got some that are like $3.90. All right. So we're below $4. We're sub $4 again on corn for cash bids. Now, as we look at like futures prices for December months for the 2026 crop, those are still a little bit higher yet. But yet we still at the same time, we're pulling off of our highs. Once again, 50 cents. I use that in the beginning example because that's exactly where we're sitting at right now anyways. So once again, I kind of hope that we get this bump in there, a rally in the market by the time you hear this. But the reality is we've pulled off the highs, and that's not very fun. That's not very fun when you're selling a commodity that goes off the Chicago Board of Trade. There's lots of things that move the market, and we're currently in a market that's moving down. And so where this all kind of comes from for me, and where I was thinking about this, is I actually had a client text me, and he said kind of this exact words was, corn really took a hit. Makes it a really big challenge to create new crop sales. And I was like, man, I completely feel you there. It's been a tough one. When you're in a market that you just don't feel like you're going anywhere, you're definitely going in the wrong direction. That makes it really hard to pull the trigger, getting a new sales done. Makes it hard to even be positive about where the markets could be, where they should be, right? But I also want to be kind of completely honest here, in that the last couple of weeks, as this market has slid down, I haven't necessarily been paying a lot of attention to it. And that might sound really bad, but that's just kind of the truth of the matter. And I haven't been paying attention, mostly because we work at the marketing advisor that is kind of my eyes and ears when I've got other things going. And we've been, obviously we're in the heart of the busy season, whether it be spraying or haying or side dressing like we're doing today. So I've got plenty of other things going on, just like you do, right? That's kind of one caveat there for me, is I use a marketing advisor, so therefore I don't always pay attention to the markets. So when he texted me that, I went and pulled it up. I was like, oh Lord, yeah, we are down literally 50 cents, right? When he shot me that text, it just kind of reminded me of some texts I've shot our marketing advisor. When I am paying attention to the markets a little bit more and we see the red on the screen, we're sending almost that text out like, man, corn really took a hit, hard to make new sales. I'm looking for that response back that like, maybe he responds, oh no, it'll be fine. It'll be back up on Monday. Or he'll respond, wow, this is just a little hiccup in the rally. Look forward to the report next week. And we're searching for that sense of positivity to kind of relight that fire back in us, right? Or just to kind of calm our fears, take away some of those negative thoughts and those stories, right? We're kind of searching for that. Or maybe he'll say something about, okay, it's down, but here we're going to make a move and we're going to do this, that, or the other thing. And once again, kind of calming those fears and that bit of anxiety or that panic that comes upon you, right? I've been there. Like I said, I've shot those texts and trying to figure out, oh, what are we going to do? We're back to $4 corn again. What are we going to do? How can we make this work? And just hoping and praying almost that they have some sort of golden answer, golden ticket to get us through this. So, I mean, I've been there. And I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like what this kind of comes down to is like everything else. We got to control what we can control. And one of the biggest things that we can actually control is our mindset. And so the mindset, kind of the framework that we even have for making those different choices and those different decisions and how we see those different decisions. And the mindset that we get into when we get into these hard seasons where corn is down 50 cents. And so kind of controlling the controllables and one of those being your mindset. So I want to get into my response to him because as I was thinking about this and as he shot me that text, I'm like, I don't even know how to respond sometimes because I don't have the golden answer. I don't know what corn's going to do tomorrow or next week. It'd be a whole lot easier if I did. So, I didn't necessarily have the best response to him, but I'm like, okay, we got to take a step back here. We got to analyze this in some sort of way that helps us be proactive in the future. We're not just kind of sitting here BSing or kind of groaning, where the markets are. Let's just figure out how we can basically take advantage of, if there's ever a rally that comes or what we can do to protect our mindset and what we can do moving forward, right? And so kind of my response to him was ultimately back to that framework that I just mentioned. Okay, how can we set up a framework either for our mindset, but even just asking ourselves these questions so we better understand how we make decisions. So the first question I had for him, I was like, well, have you sold any? That's a realistic question because maybe he's 50% sold. Maybe that's where he wants to be, but he's still panicking and freaking out. And I mean, we've all been there. I feel like within our operation, we are pretty far sold for 2026 already. But I'm still like, man, whenever you see that $4 or whenever you see you're down 50 cents, by the way, I talk about 50 cents. And for those of you that are listening to this that maybe are not heavily involved in agriculture and row crops specifically, 50 cents may not seem like a lot. But I was doing some just real quick, easy math before. And so on an operation, let's call it a 200 bushel an acre corn farmer, which is pretty standard, pretty average. 50 cents, that's about $100 an acre. So yeah, once again, $100 an acre may not seem like much. Say if you're farming 500 acres, which is pretty average, once again, that's $50,000. That's just poof, gone within the matter of a couple of weeks just because the markets don't have anything news or anything to actually react on, which is kind of crazy to think about from the outside looking in, right? There's so much that moves the markets and moves our revenue rate basically within our operation back to being price takers. I'm not going to get on that tangent, but I wanted to kind of bring that context back to this whole thing I keep referencing of down 50 cents. Well, we're down basically $50,000. There's a lot of weight that comes with that. So then all of a sudden, those stories that do start to creep in. So we got to address those all, obviously. But getting back to what I mentioned before is, have you sold any yet? Maybe we are actually in a pretty good position. But once again, we see that down 50 cents. We see how that could affect us. We see how that maybe there's even just a few remaining bushels that we haven't sold that's going to be affected. Or maybe we haven't sold any. And so that's where I kind of went to the next question. I'm like, all right, so if you haven't sold any, or if you haven't sold as much as you wish you did, what's the reason you haven't sold? I think this is a very valid question. What's the reason you haven't sold in this case? This might be another prime example or just different questions whenever we come to making decisions. What's the reason why we haven't or have? So in this case, what's the reason why? It might be a multiple different reasons. Maybe it's thinking that the price is going to go higher. That's a pretty good one, right? Not sure if the price is a good price, quote unquote, good price. Well, what the hell is a good price? Or if it's even above our break even. By the way, do you even know your break even? Got to answer that one first, right? Kind of back to the good price there. That kind of coincides with break even. So those would be a couple good ones. Or maybe we've just been busy, right? Like most of us. Man, shit, didn't even know that the market was down 50 cents. Been busy. If I'd have known it was maybe up 25, 30 cents in the last couple weeks or month, maybe I would have sold something. Maybe it's just been busy. Maybe been focused on planting and side dressing and spraying. Maybe we got a family vacation, so we're gone, or all these other things, this, that, and the other thing that comes up in the summertime and every time throughout the year. There's always our busy season. So maybe we just don't have the time to focus on it. So maybe we just didn't get any new sales. Maybe we just sat on the sideline. We didn't know what to do, so we just did nothing. That was the choice we made. We didn't make a choice, but it was ultimately a choice because we did nothing. I could go on and on here for all the reasons that we didn't sell. Maybe the coffee shop neighbor down the road that you stopped to talk to for 5 minutes on the side of the road said, "Hey, it's going up. You shouldn't sell." Or whatever the reason, this, that, or the other thing. So we got to ask ourselves, what's the actual reason for us? What's the actual reason for us? Maybe not for Joe Blow down the road, but for you. Why haven't you sold? Why didn't you make that decision? And now, furthermore, kind of continuing on that, asking ourselves questions, because that's ultimately what it comes down to, is just asking questions so we can understand better, so we can make better decisions. And so we got to ask these questions to understand how we make decisions in the first place. Okay, so that's number one here. That's why it's worth asking these questions in the first place, is to better understand how we make decisions. Because ultimately what we're trying to do here, just in general within this conversation, within the clients that we serve within Pioneer Farmer, is we're trying to get to the point where we can make a better quality decision. Because a better quality decision will have a direct impact on your bottom line, on your profitability. And so if we can understand how we first off make decisions currently, then we can get to improving those decisions. All right. So that's the second part of why it's important asking these questions, is so that way we can make a better decision in the future. So that way, when we do get this bump or the rally that will come eventually, by the way, not saying we won't pull more off the market first, but we will get a bump or rally at some point. Markets ebb and flow. They go up and down. We got to understand that. It's an emotional roller coaster if you want to ride it. But at the end of the day, we got to understand, okay, there will be opportunities to come in the future. So we got to make sure that we have the right framework, the right mindset going into that, so we can capitalize on all of those different opportunities. So that's why it's just extremely important to kind of step back and acknowledge the framework that we've built and that we currently have. And then we can improve it from there on. Building upon that a little bit further, when working with our marketing advisor, we always kind of come back to this question. So what scares you more? Locking it in and missing the top, or not selling and you're exposed to the bottom? That's a really valid question. That's kind of our cornerstone that we keep coming back to. And it's great when you have somebody else, maybe like a third party that you're working with, a marketing advisor in this standpoint, or just a consultant. I mean, even when I talk with my clients one-on-one, it's just having somebody to remove that emotion because you're so attached to your current situation. So therefore, in this case, when somebody else kind of from the outside looking in comes in and asks this question, what scares you more? Okay, so in this case, when we're talking about marketing, we're talking about this corn crop right now and how we've pulled 50 cents off the top. So if we were 50 cents higher just a couple weeks ago, because it wasn't that long ago, we were over $5. I'm talking about December futures, not current crop, not current cash bids. Looking at December futures, we were over $5 and we pulled off 50 cents now. So we're just over about $4.50 as I look today. Got to ask ourselves, okay, what scares you more? Locking in, missing out on the top, or that exposure to the bottom? And really what we're trying to get down here is just kind of trying to figure out what's your risk tolerance. Okay. And another way to kind of think about this is what's going to keep you up at night. Another way to kind of reframe that, instead of what scares you more, is what's going to keep you up at night. So if you locked in $5, but in the next couple of weeks it went to $5.50, would that scare you? Would that keep you up at night because you missed out on the top? Or on the current situation, if you didn't lock in $5 and now we're sitting at $4.50, would that keep you up at night? Or would you sit here and you'd be looking at your phone, seeing red on the screen again, and you get into that panic attack and all of a sudden these stories, you start running through your head like, man, I had a tough time paying my operating loan back last year. How the hell am I going to do it this year when we just pulled off 50 cents? I mean, I'm a 500-acre farmer. That's $50,000 out of my pocket. Poof, that I'm not going to be collecting that. Or all these things that just start going through your head, I can't do this. I can't do that. Man, kids want to take a vacation. I just don't know if we can do that. I'm not in the right headspace to do it. Definitely after we pulled 50 cents off the corn market, 50,000, that's not going to be coming into my pocket. Man, I just rambling on all these stories that just start running. And so you got to ask yourselves, what's going to keep you up at night? What scares you more? Because by asking this and being able to answer it, by the way, is going to help you basically understand what's your risk tolerance. And what's your risk tolerance is going to be able to help you make better decisions. Back to that framework that we talked about earlier. Why didn't you sell anything? Well, is it because that you thought it was going higher and you wanted to capitalize on that? If you'd have locked it in and it did go higher, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night because you just missed out on the top because that's just kind of the person you are? Maybe. But then you got to live on the flip side too. All right. You got to live when it goes the other way. And by the way, I do want to stress, because there's no right or wrong answer here. There's no right or wrong answer because the person that says, well, I don't want to lock it in at 5 because it's going to 550, they're in the right. But also the person that says, I'm going to lock it in at 5 because if it goes to 450, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night, they're also in the right. Right? It just ultimately depends on kind of your shoes that you're in, the perspective and worldview that you currently have. And what I mean by that is the different things that you've been through, different experiences you've had, maybe everything that you're taught, trained, and conditioned with over the years. And maybe you're a generational farm, so you've got some of these different values that were passed down to you from previous generations. Maybe conservative values, maybe they're risk-taking values because that got you to where you are today. Maybe you're a first-generation farmer. You don't have any of those other things that are kind of imposed upon you. Maybe you're just trying to survive. So in which case, you have a lower risk tolerance. You got to also kind of analyze, okay, how do we perceive risk? How do we think about what actually scares us the most? And so those are different kind of thoughts that come up for me when it comes to when I was talking with this guy. For my personal experience, kind of shifting back to our operation, and because of the things that we've been in the past and stressed financially, I would say I'm more on the lower risk tolerance side. I want to make sure that we are protecting the legacy that we've built thus far. And I feel like in order to do that, I don't need home runs. I need base hits that keep us in the game and that keep us surviving and moving forward. That's just our operation. That's just the way that I see things. That's just the way that I view marketing and the way that we make decisions. But going back to the framework here, because this is ultimately what it comes back to, is giving you a framework, not like do this or do that, because we don't know what to do. If I knew what to do, it kind of goes back to everything else. If I knew what to do, I'd probably be on a beach somewhere. Same with the marketing advisors. And that's always that big hiccup there when it comes to working with a marketing advisor. They're always like, that's always everybody's go-to is, well, they don't know any better than what we do. So why would I pay them money to make these decisions for me? Well, that might be true, but there's still a lot of benefits to working with a market advisor. Not going to get into that, but I think that's ultimately some of the different thoughts that come up, right? For all of us. And so as we kind of get to maybe rounding this out a little bit, maybe a little bit of a shorter episode, but at the end of the day, just giving you something to think about when it comes to whether it be the markets, whether it comes to any other decisions that we make within our operation, within the day-to-day operations, or the global view of like big global decisions within our operation that affect the operation in a big way. We just got to analyze how we make those decisions. Why haven't we sold the grain yet? Why haven't we sold the cattle yet? Why haven't we done this, that, or the other thing? And what's the reason why? So I think it's really important as we kind of get rounding this out to ask yourselves these questions. And then by doing so, we're ultimately trying to remove the emotions. And by removing the emotions, that's when we can finally start to build the marketing plan. We can finally start to understand how we make decisions so we can make better decisions. If we can improve the quality of the decision-making process, we will ultimately improve your profitability, improve the dollars that go back into your pocket, back into your family's pocket, back into your bank account to do what you want with. And so that's kind of the key takeaways that I have for this week's episode, is really just to kind of dive into how you make decisions. Now, once again, I hope by the time you hear this, comes out, we've gotten another bump in the market. So that way we can continue to push sales and we continue to move that needle. And then furthermore, the kind of last comment here is when it comes to maybe making these different decisions, if you feel like it'd be beneficial for you to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, or maybe somebody to kind of help you remove that emotion. Maybe you even want to talk to a marketing advisor. Maybe you want to see if, hey, I can maybe have you talk to our marketing advisor. And so see if there's maybe a strike up that conversation there. Ask yourself maybe these questions. Maybe just need somebody else to ask them so you can answer them honestly for yourself. Or furthermore, kind of last thing here is maybe you want to actually have a way to build out that break even that I mentioned before that maybe we don't know what that actually is. Maybe we got a ballpark. Maybe we're using the break even from the neighbor down the road, that Joe Blow that thinks he's got his break even dialed in too. Either way, if those are things that you'd like help with, so that way we can remove some of the emotions, build out the marketing plan, and take back control of the things that we can actually control, look up our website, pioneerfarmer.org. Be happy to have that conversation and go from there. But otherwise, that's all I got for this week's episode. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the summer, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for tagging along with me today as we sharpened our mindsets. If you've gained insight from today's episode, be sure to take a screenshot to share or send this episode to somebody who might also find value in it. For more, follow me on Instagram @GarrettRuskamp or on Facebook, and join me next time for more conviction through clarity.